Hey guys, Suki here with a new CSR2 video. In today's video, we won't be breaking down any cars or events or anything like that. No, instead, we will be taking a trip down memory lane and revisiting the original CSR racing. And I'll be talking about 5 things that I want to see added back into CSR2 from the original CSR racing. Now, I understand that CSR2 is a decade old at this point, and me putting my video up might not change anything, if at all. But nevertheless, I just want to share what I have to say, and maybe you guys can resonate with me as well. So without further ado, let's hop right into the video. Thing number 1 I want to see added back into CSR2, payback races. Now, payback races are only unlocked in CSR racing after you beat Tier 5 and move on to the International. From there, occasionally a payback race will pop up on your map and you get to re-race a crew member or crew leader that you've beaten in the past in your payback races. Most of the time, these are just little additions to the game's story, but occasionally, if you do race a crew member or crew leader you have raced against in the past and you didn't win their boss car, this also gives you another shot at winning said boss cars. And this would be really nice to see added back to CSR2 because as of now, the only boss cars that you can win the only boss cars that you can re-race to win are the Toyota 86, the CLA, the HPE Mustang, the Project 7, and the Agera R. These are the first set of boss cars, and the only exception to this is Harkness's Sesto Elemental, because all these cars are in collections, and the re-race feature is a part of collections, which is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about random races that pop up that randomly gives you a shot at winning the boss cars again. So if you miss out on other boss cars like Sneak's Focus Trackster, Angel Civic, Amelia's LB M4, Finn's Exige 360 Cup, you're basically out of luck because there's no way to re-obtain those cars after missing out on those high-stakes races. Versus, if CSR2 had those payback races, you could essentially re-challenge them sometime in the future and basically give yourself another shot at winning those cars. So as a result, I would say payback races are thing number 1 I want to see added back into CSR2. Thing number 2, slingshot races. Now, a slingshot race is something like a regulation race, but way more difficult. And to illustrate this point, I will be using my Aston Martin V12 Vantage Roadster you see on the screen right now. This car runs about, I would say, 10.5. So if I were to do a slingshot race in this car, what my opponent would be driving would be something in Tier 1, Tier 2, or Tier 3. And they would be facing against my Tier 5 V12 Vantage Roadster, but with a twist. And that twist is they get a hit start and I don't. So I could be racing against a Tier 3, let's say a LB SRT Hellcat, and this opponent will get maybe 5 seconds of hit start, and I would be held back for 5 seconds. So as a result, I would have to play catch up and catch up to my opponent before he crosses the finish line. So in essence, this is like a regulation race, but with a twist. And also, I will say that if I'm not wrong, you could also change the difficulty of these races in the original CSR racing, and the challenging races from my memory were actually challenging, unlike the Tier 5 Pro regulation races in CSR2, which are so easy that you could easily beat them in a fully upgraded Tier 4 car. They're that easy. So as a result, I would love a bit of a challenge, and slingshot races are part of that challenge. Which brings me to point number 3. Test drive races. Now, test drive races are very similar to your daily battles in the sense that you drive a loaner car that you have never driven before and you have to win that race. And you can also change the difficulty of this kind of race in the original CSR racing, and basically you have easy, medium, and difficult. And again, the difficult races are actually tough because you are in a car which you don't know how to shift, don't know the best way to activate nitrous, so on. And you have to win that race. And the challenging races, while they are a bit difficult to win, if you know how the car shifts, you could easily win that. And the reward for that was about, I would say, 17 grand, which is way more than a typical regulation race is going to pay out. So not only does it pay out more, it's quite fun to learn a new car and basically test a car that you don't own yet. So as a result, I would say I would love to see test drive races added back to CSR2. And one thing I just want to add on is that unlike daily battles, because in daily battles, your opponent's car is a few PP lower than yours. Again, in test drive races, you can scale that PP either easy, where your opponent's PP is less than yours, medium, where it's equal to yours, or difficult, where it's higher than yours. So as a result, test drive races are challenging and fun and reward more money than regulation races. Hence why I want to see them added back to CSR2. Moving on to point 4, something very similar to a regulation race are match races. And match races put you up against a very well-tuned opponent. So this is like taking part in one of the many events that CSR2 has going at any given time, in the sense where the final races are very challenging and put a fully upgraded car to the test. And this is something I want to see added into CSR2, where you are racing in your car and your opponent is very well tuned, possibly even better tuned than your car, and how you win is up to how you shift your car. So as a result, you can win, but it's going to be difficult. And the reward is, of course, better than a typical regulation race. So as a result, I would say I would love to see match races added back into CSR2, because they actually add a sense of a challenge back into the game. Unlike, again, the typical regulation races, which a Tier 5 Pro regulation race can be easily won in a fully upgraded Tier 4 car, which doesn't pose much of a challenge. But match races do, because a match race, as the name implies, puts you up against an opponent that's well-tuned respective to your car. So assuming I have a car that runs 9.4, my opponent would maybe run 9.45. It's that crazy. So as a result, I would love to see match races added back to CSR2, because the existing regulation races just aren't challenging enough and not very fun. Lastly, the final thing I want to see added back to CSR2 are the original engine sounds from CSR Racing. Now, the reason I say this is because CSR2 has a limited selection of engine sounds. If you have a lot of cars, you will know which cars reuse engine sounds from others. So as a result, it gets really boring, and I really love the engine sounds of the original cars in CSR Racing. So I wouldn't even mind if they reuse them reuse them exactly as they are from the original CSR Racing. I wouldn't even mind that, because those engine sounds sounded great, especially those of the 458 Special and the LaFerrari. So as a result, please reuse those engine sounds. I wouldn't even be mad. It would just add more variety and make the game more spicy. So that wraps up the 5 things I want to see added back into CSR2. If you have anything you'd like to add, do let me know in the comments. And if this video piques your interest, do consider leaving a like and subscribing to my channel. With that all said and done, thank you so much for watching. Take very good care of yourselves, and I will see you in my next video.